does your neurodiverse condition interact with other aspects of your identity? Some examples include race, gender, culture, sexuality, or other physical or mental disabilities.
I'm asexual, ageosexual, which took me a long time to figure out. And it turns out that as far as people on the autistic spectrum go, it's not uncommon, which was really nice to find. I know historically a lot of autism tests have been around, the white male, and so there's a ton of support for me as in that, but it's also, you think about, it's really connected me a lot to equity work, because now I'm a little bit more aware of how the intersection of race and gender and neurodiversity are affecting other people, and it's been very interesting becoming more aware of the world.
COVID-19 and the world largely moving online. Has it been a net negative, a net positive, or just neutral?
Probably net positive. It was weird. A lot of me and my neurodivergent friends, when things started locking down, we were like, you know what, this is kind of nice. Not having a 9 to 5, not sitting in an office with fluorescent lighting every day, knowing exactly what every other person's schedule is because they have to post it online, and we have to post it online, and managing those expectations. And now so much of the world can sort of see, what it's like to know exactly the joys of, planning out an entire day minute by minute, like a lot of us love to do. It was, I was able to do a lot of thinking and self-reflecting, and I think generally came out better for it.
Cool. And has the transition to in-person been relatively smooth for you, would you say?
Well, it's interesting. I was laid off right at the beginning of COVID, but I was fortunate in that I've got handyman skills and bartending skills, and so I can just sort of jump back into that, which is what I've since done. Now I'm bartending and serving in person again, which you would think from a neurodiverse perspective would be difficult because there's so many moving parts to everything, but really it's just about mostly it's just balancing inventory for a few hundred different items at the same time. So I really enjoy sort of the structure of that. You're essentially reading from a script for every person that comes in the door. Your expectations are exactly what they are. You know exactly what every single thing is supposed to do and be. Going back to something that I know how to do.
How do you think it compares to work in sort of like the more traditional 9 to 5 nonprofit sector as opposed to bartending and serving?
I never really enjoyed the aspect of meetings, meetings as they happen in both the nonprofit sector and corporate America. Meeting with the donor, you've got to really put on a facade. But, I don't have to sell anything when I go to the service industry. Someone comes up and says, I want this. I'm like, I can tell you everything about it and all of its history. Most of my world is in marketing, which these days is mostly just numbers, which is lovely because just looking at numbers is great. I can look at spreadsheets all day. And that's actually what sort of drew me to my master's, which was in communications. It was something that I really needed to sort of level up and UW had a great program for it. Like coming into it, there were a lot of social hurdles and social things that I didn't know how to get past initially. Just simple things like after class, someone would come up to me and say, hey, we're all going to the bar. And I would think, oh, that's nice. And then I'd walk off thinking, I wish they would have invited me to that. I didn't know that they were inviting me. It didn't click right away. Eventually, I kind of figured it out. It's just something that we have to try to be proactive about. It's like, expressing your emotions, expressing your desire. It's like, is it okay if I come to this thing? Is it okay if I do this thing?
Cool. And then, what would an ideal school or work environment look like for you as a neurodivergent person?
The first time I went to school, University of Oregon it was so overwhelming that I ended up flunking out. I was going from a 150 person graduating class to a 400, 500 person classroom, and it was just overwhelming for me. I didn't have any resources. This is a decade before I'd be diagnosed or even think about autism. Yeah, I just didn't have any resources inside us to understand any of that. I spent some time traveling and working, ended up going back to community college, which turned out to be really nice because it's people from all walks. People just getting out of high school, people with various disabilities, people with who were 55, 60, coming back for re-education. I'm a big fan of the community colleges and a lot of their programs. It's a great, usually very safe, secure way to ease out of high school and into the collegiate system. Also prepared me a lot for then going back to undergraduate over at Western Oregon University. University of Oregon, I had no one reached out for support. That if you failed a class, a teacher wouldn't come in and say, "Hey, can we help you in some way? Can we provide some services?" People who come in with built-in support systems, emotional support and professional support, people who have the privileges enough that they can take unpaid internships and things of that nature. They'll succeed more likely.
How do you perceive neurotypical brains to work, and how would you describe the way your own brain works by comparison?
Yeah, so I went out on a date with someone recently, a first date, which I always over-prepare for. It was I prepared an indoor picnic right there, which is a lot for a first date, I realize, but it tends to be what I do. And after the date, luckily we've still been talking, but I think about like every scenario of like what could happen with this person. Is there a long-term thing? Is it a short-term thing? When do we have a sex conversation? When do we meet up again? Is it too much for me to put them on planning the next date? I don't think neurotypical people, most of them, probably don't think.
Yeah, and so many people are like, "Oh yeah, I just date and just see what happens." It's like that doesn't click in my head. Like I don't understand that.
Yeah, I wish I could do that. I mean, not over planning every single aspect of everything would be great. Which is a handy skill in some situations, like when you're planning out like a marketing plan, and you're really like you're looking at numbers and you're doing it, but that doesn't really work with person-to-person relationships for most people. Yeah, I think about it's like, all right, there's like 10 first dates that I can sort of plan out. I planned out like a main course. I planned out side dishes, made a few. I had ingredients for. But I've done that so many times, and yeah, nothing's really worked out so far. But I do really wish I had the skill of just chilling out and relaxing and taking it as things go.
And how have you reconfigured your own life in unique ways to suit your learning, emotional, sensory, or other needs?
I learned a lot about this during the pandemic. Really figuring out, and through professional work life, really figuring out that I don't learn as much from like a group meeting as I would from doing a bunch of individual research ahead of time and then presenting questions in a back and forth and then proceeding from there. I really enjoy doing my due diligence ahead of time, whereas a lot of other people like to learn about people on the fly as they connect. But I can't always hold on to all of the interactions I have with people, the nuances, and they get beyond me. But when I can solidify ideas before meeting with people and expand on them after, that's where I really do my growth in relationships. But physical spaces have been interesting to move with as well, because my last place next door is a studio that's about this size, and I mostly just existed within it without having a lot to do. I was going from March last year, so I wrapped up my master's program. I was working full time, I was volunteering, and I was consulting. At one point, I hit about 100 hours a week, which is a lot. It was too much. So I scaled back to like 70 to 80 hours a week, which is my sweet spot. But then in March of 2020, it went down to like 5 hours a week. I was running social media for a few nonprofits as a volunteer, but I was just 5 hours a week and nothing to do but sit around and think in a room, which was nerve-wracking. It's hard to do. I mean, it's easy to do for like a week if you're on vacation, but to do it, I had to do it for 16 months.
Did anything good come out of that sort of contemplative space, do you think, or was it just kind of a period you had to get through?
No, it was great. I got to self-reflect a lot. I understand a lot more about myself. Wrote a book. It was very self-reflective. A lot of the content for it was writing out scenarios from my own life, and so I really got to think about why I was in those scenarios, and the people around me, and the difference between obsession and empathy, and what it means in romantic relationships. And so for me, it was very helpful. I know a lot more about how the spaces around me affect me, which is why I'm getting a carpet today. The echoing, I can feel just, going around the room.
And kind of related to that, what is one accommodation that you commonly request, and how does it facilitate your success?
The thing that I request most often, sensory issues. Just let me wear sunglasses sometimes, or I have earbuds in. Immensely helps me in an office setting, just because it's fluorescent lighting and lots of noises going on. It really helps me focus on what people are talking about and doing at the time. But it's also, you see someone with sunglasses inside at an office meeting, sometimes I just need to explain, what's going on. And usually I just leave it, I've got some sensory issues, I'm sorry if this seems weird. And they're like, oh, it's fine. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm okay with it.
What is one common feature of the world that is inaccessible that neurotypical people often don't think about?
Empathy, I suppose, is the big one. You don't know. What's the phrase? You don't know until you know. It's this line in if you don't know now, you know. But you don't know until you are made aware of it. I feel like I probably had sort of a lack of empathy to a lot of things until I realized that other people were going through exactly the same thing I was going through. I was just trying to, grasp onto my own existence, just trying to make sure that I could, succeed at whatever I was doing. And I didn't realize that so many other people were going through exactly the same struggles that I couldn't put words to. Diagnosis definitely helped me improve greatly on my empathy. Oh man, there was this campaign done by Block Creative called the Crappy Curb campaign, sort of pointing out all of the curbs that weren't wheelchair accessible in Seattle. I had never thought about that before. It was, completely past me, and now every time I see one that's not wheelchair accessible, it's like, I'm just going to take a sledgehammer to it. There's so much in the world I was kind of blind to before I started looking into the world of disabilities.
And then, last question. If this concept resonates with you, what does neurodivergent or autistic joy look like to you?
I think empathy within a sense of community, figuring out that you're not alone in your experiences, and being able to connect yourself, for whatever you define joy, but then also being able to, when you understand yourself well enough and your experiences well enough, being able to help others experience that